In the coming 24 months, Britain stands on the brink of a series of interconnected crises that could profoundly alter the fabric of daily life in this nation. And while some may dismiss these concerns as overstated, drawing parallels to historical challenges like the two world wars, the Great Depression, the economic turmoil of the 1970s, or the financial crisis of 2008, the current situation diverges significantly because it involves not a singular issue but 6 overlapping breakdowns that amplify one another, creating a potential downward trajectory without a straightforward resolution. And as we delve into this analysis from UK Economy Pulse, it becomes evident that the decisions made in the next 2 years will shape whether the United Kingdom sustains its status as a leading developed economy or descends into a phase of managed decline so pronounced that future generations might question the inaction of the present. Yet the critical insight is that recognition of the severity often arrives too late for effective personal safeguards, underscoring the urgency of preparation in the immediate term rather than waiting for irrefutable proof amid widespread panic. So ensure you are subscribed to UK Economy Pulse for grounded, evidence-based insights that transcend mere conjecture or alarmism. As what follows is a detailed examination of these 6 converging crises, each reinforcing the others in a manner that heightens the overall risk. And to set the stage, consider a recent development that warranted prominent coverage but received scant attention: the downgrade of the UK's credit rating by Moody's from AA to AA-, a shift that signals diminished confidence among international investors in the government's capacity to honor its debts, resulting in elevated borrowing expenses, reduced foreign capital inflows, and a broader erosion of global trust in Britain's fiscal stewardship, marking a departure from the era when the nation held a AAA rating synonymous with unassailable creditworthiness. And this event serves as a harbinger within a constellation of 6 structural challenges now reaching critical mass, where their interdependence renders the scenario particularly precarious, beginning with the first crisis of economic stagnation, where the UK economy has exhibited minimal expansion over the past 15 years following the 2008 financial crisis, with GDP per capita remaining virtually unchanged, positioning Britain as the sole major economy where real wages today fall below 2008 levels, representing an extraordinary reversal over 17 years that leaves the average worker in a diminished financial state compared to that period, a phenomenon without precedent in contemporary British economic records, compounded by a complete halt in productivity growth, the essential engine of enduring prosperity, such that UK productivity lags 20% behind that of France and Germany, implying that a French worker accomplishes in 4 days what requires 5 days from a British counterpart, thereby widening the competitive disparity annually, while business investment ranks as the lowest among G7 nations, prompting corporations to channel funds elsewhere, with factories constructed in places like Poland rather than Birmingham, and technology centers developing in Berlin instead of Manchester, diverting the capital essential for revitalizing the British economy to regions offering superior returns and stability. And the ramifications are profound because absent economic growth, foundational elements falter. As funding for the National Health Service becomes untenable, pension obligations grow unmanageable, and infrastructure upkeep proves impossible, essentially transforming a stagnant economy into one in regression, a decline that has persisted for more than a decade, yet remains underappreciated by many due to its incremental nature that fosters adaptation and normalization. Transitioning to the second crisis of demographic collapse, a topic often avoided owing to its sobering consequences, where the UK's birth rate has plummeted to 1.49 children per woman, substantially beneath the 2.1 replacement threshold necessary to sustain population levels, and contrary to notions that a reduced population might alleviate strains on housing and public services, the reality is far more dire, as the decline does not occur uniformly across demographics but features fewer births among the young alongside extended lifespans for the elderly. yielding a swiftly aging society with a shrinking proportion of working-age individuals to support retirees, currently maintaining a ratio of about 3 workers per pensioner, projected to diminish to 2 to 1 by 2040 and potentially approach parity by 2050, which economically translates to an untenable burden where a single worker must generate sufficient tax revenue to cover a pensioner's state pension, healthcare through the NHS, and social support, a fiscal equation that defies viability and precipitates systemic failure, mirroring experiences in Japan where demographic aging preceded full economic maturity, leading to 3 decades of stagnation, or in South Korea with a birth rate of 0.7 steering toward potential societal vanishing within a century, and the UK mirrors this path with a lag of 10 to 15 years, while suggestions that immigration could mitigate this overlook the requirement for net annual inflows of approximately 1 million people indefinitely to preserve the existing age balance, a scale politically unfeasible given public sentiment. Yet without such measures, the demographic arithmetic unravels, moving to the third crisis of infrastructure decay, where Britain's physical foundations are deteriorating without adequate resources for remediation, exemplified by a water system that forfeits 30% of supply through leaks prior to household delivery, with Victorian-era conduits eroding subsurface, as water firms have prioritized dividend payouts in the billions over reinvestment, now positioning major urban centers for potential water scarcities within a decade, not due to environmental shifts but sheer infrastructural incapacity to transport available resources, alongside a road network demanding £14 billion in urgent repairs merely to address accumulated potholes and structural deficiencies, funds unavailable to local authorities, allowing degradation to outpace maintenance such that significant segments could become impracticable within 10 years, absent substantial unavailable funding, while the rail infrastructure embodies disarray with obsolete rolling stock, antiquated signaling, and pressing replacement needs, as the HS2 high-speed initiative intended to overhaul transport has undergone repeated curtailments and may never fulfill its initial scope, contrasting with extensive high-speed networks in France, Spain, Japan, and China. And the electrical grid remains ill-equipped for the shift to electric vehicles and heat pumps, where even a 30% adoption in the ensuing 5 years could overwhelm capacity, necessitating vast outlays in grid enhancements, new generation facilities, and intelligent metering that are not materializing at requisite levels, further illustrated by hospitals confronting an NHS maintenance deficit exceeding £11 billion, with leaking roofs, malfunctioning heating, and closures of surgical suites due to building hazards, conditions incongruent with a developed nation's standards but reflective of Britain in 2025, and once decay surpasses a threshold, repair costs escalate prohibitively, initiating a cycle where affordability wanes as deterioration intensifies, a loop already ensnaring multiple UK infrastructure sectors without evident escape, advancing to the fourth crisis of social fracture, where societal cohesion in Britain is eroding at an alarming rate, with regional disparities attaining magnitudes unseen since the Industrial Revolution, pitting London and the South East against other regions in terms of wealth, opportunities, and even life expectancy, where a child in Blackpool faces a 10-year shorter lifespan than one in Westminster, a disparity within the same borders that belies claims to advanced status and signals systemic shortcomings affecting vast swaths of the populace, accompanied by plummeting trust in core institutions including government, parliament, police, media, and the NHS, which undermines their efficacy in a self-reinforcing manner, while political polarization deepens not merely along ideological lines, but across Brexit divides, generational gaps, urban-rural schisms, and educational cleavages, fostering incompatible perspectives rooted in divergent facts and principles, thereby weakening the social bonds essential for navigating adversity, unlike the unified national ethos that sustained Britain through World War II's trials, a solidarity now absent, such that impending economic strains could exacerbate rivalries over diminishing resources rather than foster cooperation, with rising crime rates especially in violent offenses and retail theft, amid reduced police forces and abysmal detection rates for property crimes where investigations are often foregone in favor of mere reference numbers for insurance, paving the way for a bifurcated security landscape where affluent zones rely on private protection and others acclimate to elevated criminality, progressing to the fifth crisis of energy vulnerability, where Britain's energy posture is alarmingly fragile, with many unaware of the extent of reliance on external systems, as North Sea oil and gas output has dwindled by 75% since 2000, rendering the nation a substantial net importer susceptible to global fluctuations, as evidenced by the tripling of energy costs during the 2022-2023 European market surges due to unmitigated exposure to international gas pricing, necessitating tens of billions in government subsidies to avert economic meltdown. A susceptibility that persists with the decommissioning of most coal facilities and impending closures of aging nuclear plants over the next decade, staking the future on renewables and imported gas, where any renewed supply disruption or infrastructural lapse could precipitate actual shortages, given depleted strategic petroleum reserves and limited storage, operating within a precarious just-in-time framework, demanding perpetual flawlessness to evade outages, and compounding this, the renewable transition demands copious quantities of copper, lithium, and rare earths, materials Britain scarcely produces, relying on vulnerable global chains predominantly from China for essential components in turbines, panels, and batteries, where geopolitical interruptions could halt progress entirely, concluding with the sixth crisis of geopolitical isolation, where Britain's global standing has eroded markedly over the last decade, commencing with departure from the European Union, its primary trade ally, yielding reduced commerce, diminished European investment, and the substitution of seamless market entry with bureaucratic hurdles, delays, and expenses, while the long-standing special relationship with the United States wanes as American focus shifts to Asia, with waning engagement in European matters, eroding Britain's role as a transatlantic conduit post-EU exit, and efforts to forge new pacts with nations like India, Australia, and Asian states proceed from a position of relative weakness as a mid-tier economy, often conceding more favorable terms to counterparts. Alongside military diminishment, where the army is at its smallest since the Napoleonic era, the Navy struggles with vessel upkeep, and the Air Force contends with outdated fleets and enlistment shortfalls, retaining nuclear deterrence but lacking robust conventional capabilities compared to 2 decades prior. And while cultural soft power endures, it offers scant defense against emerging hard security threats in a volatile international arena, now amplifying the gravity. Each crisis in isolation might prove surmountable. Economic stagnation through targeted policies, demographics via strategic interventions, infrastructure with dedicated funding, social divisions drawing on historical precedents, energy risks through diversification and isolation via adaptive diplomacy, but their simultaneous occurrence engenders systemic jeopardy due to mutual exacerbation. As stagnant growth curtails revenues for infrastructure renewal, decaying facilities impede economic competitiveness. Demographic shifts reduce labor and demand to fuel further stagnation. Societal rifts obstruct consensus on reforms. Energy frailties undermine industrial viability, and isolation deters investment, forming an entrenched cycle illustrated by last winter's near collapse of Northern Ireland's power grid from combined aging assets, surging demand, and supply limits, averted only through urgent curtailments and voluntary reductions, yet with underlying issues unresolved, presaging similar vulnerabilities across the UK as decay, energy risks, and underinvestment intersect, or by municipal insolvencies like Birmingham's, heralding a broader trend where failing councils cease non-core provisions such as libraries, youth initiatives, road maintenance, park care, and minimal social services, fostering unlivable locales that spur exodus of productive residents. deepening fiscal woes in an accelerating spiral already manifesting in deindustrialized northern and Welsh areas. And regarding chronology, the process is underway in nascent form, unfolding as progressive erosion rather than abrupt cataclysm, with 2026 likely witnessing additional council failures, unprecedented NHS queues driving unaffordable private care reliance, persistent high energy costs, ongoing wage erosion, and heightened unrest without immediate catastrophe but palpable worsening, followed by 2027's probable inaugural major infrastructural breakdown, be it widespread blackouts, urban water emergencies, or transport disruptions, prompting governmental pledges unbacked by funds, awakening public awareness to the entrenched nature of decline, then 2028-2029's economic downturn from external triggers or domestic debt burdens, elevating unemployment and rendering debt obligations unsustainable, ushering in stringent austerity beyond 2010 precedents with tangible impacts on essential services, leading to 2030-2032's societal tipping point of demonstrations, labor actions, potential disturbances, and fraying civic government bonds amid political volatility, where administrations falter prematurely under insoluble inheritances, and from 2033, trajectories bifurcate toward either sweeping overhauls entailing short-term sacrifices for systemic reconfiguration or probable acquiescence to moderated downturn, evolving into a mid-income state with eroding amenities, falling living standards, and skilled emigration, the latter more plausible given political paralysis, as averting this demands unified commitment to transformative measures like colossal infrastructure commitments, fiscal overhauls, pension and healthcare redesigns, productivity boosts, European reintegration, and decisive energy strategies. Yet contemporary British politics evinces discord even on fundamentals, stymieing substantive advancement amid worsening fundamentals. Thus, for individual response, acknowledge diminished state dependability for retirement, medical, or welfare provisions, planning autonomously as if these supports will attenuate substantially, cultivate relocation alternatives leveraging portable expertise by investigating viable destinations and criteria without mandating immediate departure but securing contingencies as nations like Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and select European states solicit talent despite their challenges, yet evade Britain's unique confluence of issues, prioritize fluid assets over immobile UK property given its locality and liquidity constraints, broadening into global equities, transferable competencies, accredited learning, and cross-border connections, enhance personal robustness against foreseeable disruptions in power, water, or systems via modest reserves and supplies as prudent foresight rather than excess, fortify communal ties for mutual aid in adversity where cohesive groups outperform isolated entities, safeguard finances by dispersing holdings beyond UK institutions and into stable currencies or value-retaining instruments without extremes, proactively manage health-utilizing current NHS access before queues extend dramatically, addressing procedures like orthopedics or dentistry promptly as an investment in longevity, and for offspring, orient education toward global adaptability with emphases on linguistics, scientific and technical proficiencies, and universally validated credentials to enable opportunities beyond a potentially constrained 2050 Britain. And in summation from UK Economy Pulse, this projection stems not from wishful negativity, but from empirical patterns extrapolated from governmental data, established economic studies, and empirical observations, where reversal remains conceivable through enlightened governance embracing discomfort for renewal. Yet probability favors ongoing attenuation interspersed with acute episodes until thresholds yield, whether via fiscal implosion, irreparable breakdowns, uncontainable discord, or insidious normalization of reduced stature. And while collective remedies elude personal influence, individual foresight in adaptation distinguishes resilience from vulnerability, framing not inquiry of impending UK downturn but of proactive measures therein as The shift progresses subtly yet inexorably, unnoticed by many, so align with UK Economy Pulse for unvarnished evaluations equipping informed readiness, where clarity underpins future security amid ticking timelines. Force Expert.